Hi guys, TJ here. So today I want to talk about what it's like reading fairy tales to your daughter as a single mother by choice, because it raises lots of things. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's TJ. I'm a solo mum, single mother by choice to two kids. One is 3.5. We call her Little Star on this channel. That's her nickname. And my other one just turned 1 a while ago, and his nickname on this channel is Baby Elf. And he's not really yet at the point where I have to think about this stuff because I'm not really reading him that much other than baby books and picture books. But Little Star is at an age where she loves to read. I read to her all the time. And she, I don't know when it was, maybe 6 months ago, found this book, Cinderella, and started reading it. And I just noticed as I was reading it, like the stuff that it's teaching her. I mean, obviously, and they lived happily ever after. I mean, do I really want my daughter growing up believing this stuff? But also this book is just full of so much just sexist stuff and unrealistic stuff. But the prince met Cinderella, and because she was so beautiful, he fell in love with her straight away. And the evil sisters were so jealous, they tried to thwart her. You know, it's sort of seeding all these ideas of women competing against each other and women being jealous of each other over men. And men are only interested in women's beauty, and they fall in love the second they see the woman based on their beauty. The whole thing, it's just so ridiculous. And she has to use magic to make herself beautiful, because of course he won't like her if she looks like her real self, because she's too poor and she's too ugly and her clothes are too plain. Like, are these the messages I want to be sending my child? And of course she leaves her glass slipper behind, and then she tries it on and it's a perfect size for her. So I'm just like, what to do? Do I either throw the book out altogether, which in some cases I do. There have been some fairy tales I've just completely vetoed. I'm like, I don't want my daughter reading about how the queen poisoned Snow White with an apple. Like, that's murder, attempted murder, manslaughter. Like, I'm not letting my child read that. But this one is like, okay, how can I adapt to this? So I find myself reading it out loud and like changing the language as I read, because she can't read yet, so she's totally dependent on my words. She doesn't know what the real words say. So I change it from, once upon a time, a prince was throwing a grand party, a ball. I'm like, once upon a time, pretty nice guy decided to throw a party. I just change it as I read. I let her have the magic of the pumpkin turning into the carriage and all the beautiful kids stuff that helps their imagination. And, Cinderella puffs into a beautiful dress and goes in the carriage to the ball, which I call the party. I let her have the bit about the trying on all the slippers, because it is a fantastical tale and it's kind of fun. But instead of saying, "I don't even know your name," he murmured sadly, "I will try this slipper on every girl's foot. Whoever it fits, I shall ask to marry me." I read it like this. "I don't even know your name," he murmured sadly. "I will try this slipper on every girl's foot, and whoever it fits, I'm going to ask them out on a date. Because they might actually be a nice person, but who knows? They're very pretty, but I need to get to know them better." And then at the end, of course, the glass slipper was a perfect fit for Cinderella. "Will you marry me?" asked the prince. "I will," said Cinderella. And they lived happily ever after. Okay, that's not how I read it to her. I say, "Of course, the glass slipper was a perfect fit for Cinderella. Will you go on a date with me?" asked the prince. "I will," said Cinderella. And they went on a first date and they had a really lovely time. The end. That's how I read it. Because I don't want her growing up believing this stuff about how, like, you meet someone quickly, you fall in love instantly based on how they look, and then you live happy ever after, and there's nothing ever comes up. And it's like this fairy tale. We all grew up with these stories. And, those of us who've ended up as single mothers by choice, we've been in the dating pool, some of us, for a long time. We've lived with those fairy tales in our mind, and we've seen them debunked over and over, and we've been disappointed so many times with the realities of life, which is it's much more complicated than that. It's not based on how people look. It's based on their energies and whether they resonate with each other. It's based on their traumas and their two traumas being drawn together. And the story doesn't end when they get married. The story starts when they get married. When people get married is when the work begins, when all this stuff comes up and the two families have to integrate, and then they have kids and they're sleep deprived, and they've got stuff going on with the in-laws, and then one of them loses their job, and then one of them has a health crisis, and they have to get through this together as a team in their marriage, and all that stuff comes up, and they argue, and maybe they end up separated, and they have conflict, and then eventually maybe they're divorced, and then they got custody battles. sharing, co-parenting the children, and the children are going from one home to the other home. That's really how the story plays out. It's not they got married and they lived happily ever after. And I think because we all grew up reading these and they lived happily ever after stories, we have these such unrealistic expectations of life, and it can feel so disappointing when it doesn't pan out that way. And I just refuse to have my daughter growing up, and my son, I refuse to have them growing up with these stories in their head. Now, at the same time, I don't want to put them off love. I don't want them to be bitter and twisted and think they're never going to meet a partner and never going to get married, because I would love that for them. You know, I didn't do this by myself because I'm bitter and I hate men and I don't want to get married. I did this because I just didn't find the right person in time before my biological clock ran out and I had no more time left to have a baby. And even as it is, as you guys know, I left it extremely late. I didn't even start thinking about having a child by myself till I was 46 and a half because I was so invested in the idea of having a child with a beloved partner. So I am deeply romantic and I would love for my daughter to have that and for my son to have that. So I don't want to be bitter and twisted around them. I never say anything negative about married people. I never say anything negative about love. I never say anything negative about relationships. I'm always very positive about couples that have children together and families with mums and dads. But I also don't want to create unrealistic expectations by reading them silly romantic stories or letting them watch too many silly Disney movies where it's all about, oh, the prince saved me and, you know, he just took one look at me and he fell in love. And in a way, I quite like the movie Frozen because, you know, it debunks that a bit in the story. And when I only watched it recently with my daughter for the first time, and I was like, oh, well, firstly, it shows a single woman who did not die from being single. Like, I think her name's Elsa. I've only watched it once, but she, you know, she's still single at the end of the story, and she's a pretty powerful person. And, you know, it's not like they had to pair her off at the end of the movie with someone. So that was great. And then the sister does fall in love at first sight with a seemingly perfect man. And of course, he's revealed as the story goes on to be not a perfect man, to be a bit of an asshole. And then someone else comes along who she gets to know slowly over time with all of his weaknesses and all of his foibles and all his idiosyncrasies. And she slowly falls in love with him as their shared experiences bond them. Now, that is a healthy way to teach kids about relationships. I'm very positive about that movie. Maybe there's other issues with it I haven't thought of or haven't read about, but that part, the romance part, is good. So it's like trying to find a balance, like helping kids to believe in love, believe in relationships, believe in human connection, believe in marriage, believe in partnership, but without creating all the unrealistic expectations that we all grew up with, especially those in my generation who are older. We really grew up with all this programming, you know, Pretty Woman and Julia Roberts, and just so many movies that we watch where it was just kind of instant love, and then the movie ends when they get together and you never see the realities of the relationship playing out and breaking down and all the trauma coming up and everyone's stuff coming up, and then they have to work through it and they break up, you know. So that's my strategy. My strategy is to let my child read fairy tales as long as they're not violent. But I subtly change the language to make them a little bit more realistic, and encourage you to do the same if you're a single mother by choice. Still let them watch things about love and romance, but to the extent that you can, modify it, temper it, or choose things like Frozen that are a little bit more realistic rather than the crazy romance stories that we all grew up with. That's how I'm navigating it at the moment. Obviously, it's going to get harder when they get older because I won't have control over what they're watching and they'll be encountering things for themselves. But all I can do is model this line of balance that I am trying to model, which is I still believe in love. I think partnership is wonderful. I think marriage is wonderful. I think relationships can be fantastic. And they can also be a lot of work. They can bring a lot of stuff up. They can create a lot of conflict. You need to really have good skills. You need to be mature. You need to be centered within yourself. You need to choose with a lot of discernment who your partner is, not just based on a pretty face or what someone seems or how successful they are. I want to teach them the depths and the subtleties and the clarity of discernment so that if they do end up in a relationship, they end up in a healthy one that lasts, one that's nourishing and stable. Don't get buffeted around too much by this Tinder world that we're currently living in. So that's my goal. Wish me luck. And for those of you who are considering going down the path of having a baby by yourself as a single mother by choice, I just want to let you know that I've spent quite a lot of time writing a series of guidebooks to help you work through any doubts or any concerns that you're having about becoming a single mother by choice. Talking about some of the scarier things that come up for us when we think of it, like how will I manage financially? Is it okay to have a child without a father? What will people think? What will I tell my child? How do I handle all the stuff about the sperm donor? How do I choose my sperm donor? What do I tell my child about their donor siblings? What do I do on Father's Day? Like, that's all the stuff that I've dealt with in my guidebooks. So if you are on this solo mother path, whether you're just thinking about it or you're actually in the process of trying to get pregnant, or you're already here with a new baby and there's still some stuff coming up for you around these issues, go and get those guidebooks. I've put all my learning from the last few years, all my wisdom, all my heart and soul into them to help you as much as I possibly can. So you can get them at my website, mybabydream.club. Over here, you can see some other videos I've made about the challenges of being a solo mum, single mother by choice. And I'm sending you guys so much love, so much baby dust. See you soon. Bye.